Ah, yes, Streets of Rage, one of my absolute favorite Sega franchises to ever be released. This is a series that I can continuously return to just for short bursts of tubular beat 'em up action. And truth be told, I never thought that we would ever get another entry into this franchise simply because of how long ago it has been since the third game released on the original Mega Drive or Sega Genesis for you American lads out there. And how does this one fare? Well, simply put, it's Streets of Rage. You know, if you enjoyed the older Streets of Rage games, I'll honestly be surprised if you don't like this one. All of the controls here feel right at home, as if they have essentially been ripped out of the original trilogy and just plopped into a new updated engine. If you played all of the original games, well, everything will just feel in place, if you will, and you'll be just as comfortable here as you did way back in the day. If you haven't played the original trilogy, however, go play them. Seriously, where have you been? They're literally everywhere. And to explain the basic structure for you guys who haven't played it, this is essentially a simple beat 'em up. You start at the left of the screen, and you go to the right of the screen, and you pummel every sod who just happens to stand in your way to defeat the big bad at the end. It's simple stuff, really. Some fans of Streets of Rage 3, however, may be disappointed, that said, because the game itself mainly uses the second entry in the franchise as its base. As a result, all the characters can no longer sprint, for example, and this ability has been relegated to specific characters instead. Of course, the gameplay as a whole isn't one-to-one identical to the second title. For instance, every character gets a special attack that can be performed at the cost of some of their health, to either deal a fair chunk of damage, or to get out of a tricky situation. Now in Streets of Rage 2, this attack was there. However, there was no way to recover this health outside of the items that you pick up. Now, you are able to chain attacks together after you perform your attack to regain your lost health. However, if your attack chain gets broken by an enemy, the remaining health that you didn't recover is lost permanently, which I feel is a great, very fun risk-reward sort of system and really causes me to be tempted to use these moves way more often than in the Streets of Rage 2, just to be more efficient and at a risk, as opposed to just at a cost. This game shines too in co-op play, which can either be done with 2 players online or for the first time 4 players offline, in order to try to progress through the game. In fact, this game is probably best played with friends. Unfortunately, I can't say for how offline co-op works, as I haven't really tried it. But online co-op seems to work fine enough. Now, I say fine enough and not great, because when I was playing it, I did notice some minor, but still very noticeable lag periodically. And this didn't really ruin the fun by any means. And of course I was also live streaming this at the time, so that may also have been a factor. But it is an issue to note down, I feel. Visually, I love this title. It looks absolutely gorgeous. I love how honestly stunning this hand-drawn, comic-esque style looks. And it has a jamming soundtrack to boot too, which I easily find myself bopping my head to constantly. The game itself is also fairly reasonably lengthed in my opinion, for a beat-em-up of the style at least. It clocks in at about 3 or so hours game time, at least when I live streamed it on Twitch for my first playthrough, it did anyway, with 12 well-made levels, making this the longest game in the series. At least I think so, if I'm recalling the original ones correctly. I could be wrong there, but I'm pretty sure this is the longest one in the series. Of course, that can be a turn-off, I understand, for some folks, however, because, you know, 3 hours for a £20 price tag, you know, some people may not take to that. But, of course, this is the sort of game that isn't the type to be played one-off. This is the type of game that is best played repeatedly over a long period of time, learning the ins and outs of all the enemies and mastering each of the levels until you can start getting through it more and more efficiently. In fact, the game itself incentivizes repeat playthroughs too, as there are a number of locked characters that can be obtained from obtaining points during each game run. Whenever you hit certain point milestones that you accumulate over time, well, that's been spent in the game's game modes. Simply put though, this game is just an absolutely fantastic time, and I honestly heavily recommend it for anyone who's a fan of the series to check out. And even for newcomers, this is a solid beat 'em up title that I completely feel is 100% worth the purchase. Granted, that could just be my inner Sega fanboy showing its colours, but you never know. Either way, I think this game's worth it. I loved my time with it, and I give it a solid recommendation.